Chell. And this is from here to there. Because the distance from here to there in human experience is closer than you think. Today I'm joined by my friend Stefany Burrowes, my mentor for many years and licensed life coach. She's also soon to be an author with her book, Your Path to a Joyful Life, coming out this spring, so be sure to check her website for more information. Our topic really needs no introduction, so without further ado, let's watch the episode on transformation. So hello, Stefany.
Hey, Chell.
When I think of I need inspiration, I need positive motivation, I'm going through a transformation, I think Stefany Burrowes. So when I decided to do the episode on divorce, it seemed only natural to not dwell on the negative stuff, just to go into the transformation aspect that women may not be expecting.
I have been through divorce. I had been married for about 10 years, and I had 2 young children. And I've also ended other relationships. But yes, divorce is very challenging and demanding of who you are and who you want to be. I've been divorced for so long that I don't even consider myself divorced. I consider myself single.
So this is what I was talking to Katie, the interview right before yours.
Okay.
When you're going through it and you're looking for people to talk to level with you, it's kind of like when you have a baby and you have that amnesia and you don't remember the pain. It's like people who've gone through divorce, it's like, oh, that was 30 years ago, that was 10 years ago. Like, I'm not, I'm sorry, but I'm not going. That's the feeling that I got anyway, was they were like, I'm not going back to that dark place in my mind.
Right. No, people don't want to go back to it. Or for me, it's more like, it's not that I don't want to go back there, but because it's been so long, I'm not attached to any of what that was about. Although it must have been 6 years after my divorce, my ex came to pick up the girls, and he walked into the place where we were meeting holding hands with his girlfriend, who soon became his wife. And I had this huge reaction in me. Luckily, I didn't say anything, but the reaction inside me was, you never held hands with me. You never showed affection with me. Who do you think you are? I'm the one that initiated the divorce, and yet here I was 6 years later, stunned by this reaction in myself, totally unexpected. I believe that when we get into relationships at a deeper level, we are seeking to meet some really essential needs in ourselves from when we were very young. The need for connection, for being seen and heard for who we really are, for support, for love and affection. So when we choose to end that, whether we initiate it or not, we're forced to, at some level, take a look at those needs, even if it's unconscious. The more conscious we can make it, the better. In order to deal with those kinds of issues, we have to make them conscious.
I was not prepared for all of the subconscious stuff that came along with it, because I think it's the same either way, but in my case, I also initiated it. So it was something that I wanted. I was ready to have a positive mobility. I wanted to get away from something negative. And I still wasn't
expecting some of the feelings that I had. And like a year after, I experienced grief symptoms. And when I say grief, I don't mean I was crying and like mourning the person, or I had suicidal thoughts. I had anxiety. I had physiological symptoms similar to grief that I thought I had it under control. And it just manifested itself because subconsciously I was not dealing with some stuff.
Right. And even when you want to leave a relationship, even if you're not directly grieving the relationship itself, you're grieving the dream, all that you had hoped it would be, the loss of connection. It's more elemental than most of us recognize, especially as we're going through all the practical stuff that has to be done, the paperwork and court and that sort of thing.
So I just want to hear from you a little bit about in the process of transforming into a butterfly, to be cliche, it's going to be ugly. I mean, there's going to be, I think that some darkness is essential in order for the transformation to complete.
Yes. You can't transform without learning, and you don't learn without challenges, because in order to learn something completely new, which is what happens with transformation, something has to fall apart. Previous ways of behaving, thinking, believing have to fall apart in some respect in order for them to transform and become the new. That's why the butterfly is such a perfect metaphor for this. It's like you're reconstructing yourself to a certain extent for the transformation to happen.
Right.
So it is difficult. And I believe that it's really important that you connect with others, whether it's professionals or others who are going through a similar experience or some kind of transformation, because it's very hard to do this alone. So it's a willingness to accept the reality of what's happening right now, whether it's a moment of feeling excited about your new life or a moment of feeling challenged and overwhelmed and lost even.
I can only speak for myself, but I'm sure there are other women who felt this. I definitely felt judged by some people as almost as like, well, this is what you wanted, so why aren't you happy? Or,
right.
But I knew it was part of a process. And I'm curious what you would have to say to anyone who, because there are some women who get stuck at that place, who sometimes many years get stuck in the negative part and don't get to the other side.
So what's happening when they've gotten stuck, and you see this, for example, for myself, in the relationships I had after divorce, I had to move through a series of relationships in which I was not being fully myself. I wasn't in my marriage, and with each relationship, I learned more. I learned more about being who I really am, being true to myself in ways that didn't allow the relationship to abuse me in any way. And it's not that the other person was necessarily abusing me, and certainly not consciously, but the dynamic was such that I was allowing myself to not be fully myself and fully engaged with what was the right path for me.
And you don't even realize it's happening. You just look in the mirror one day and you're like, who am I?
Yes, yes. I was able to continue to grow through those experiences, and those experiences were necessary for me. One of the relationships, I actually became clear about abuse, and ending the relationship left me feeling like I did not want to even admit that I had been in that relationship with that person. I didn't want anyone to know. I felt enormous shame about having been in an abusive relationship, which was not, it wasn't physically abusive. And it took me a long time to get past that. So there's so many factors that contribute to getting stuck in patterns that are negative. And a big one is allowing oneself to feel victimized and to live in a mental state of a victim. And that never serves us. It's not that we need to deny or pretend that nothing happened to us that victimized us, but it has to do with transforming your relationship to yourself and your concept of yourself, not as a victim, but as someone who is actually capable of taking action in the world in a manner that changes how I relate to myself and how I relate to the world and to other people. That's a pretty big statement. It covers a lot of territory.
Well, where would you suggest that a woman begin?
Deep self-care, which includes learning how to be really kind to yourself, changing how you treat yourself in really basic everyday ways. So yes, going to get a massage is nice, but I mean something much deeper, including noticing when you are saying things to yourself about yourself, treating yourself as if you're not worthy or as if you're a bad person in any way. Any way that you talk to yourself that is negative and treats yourself badly. And interrupt that. Consciously choose. And the first step is to notice that you're doing that. Because often it's very unconscious behavior and very automatic because you've been doing it for a long time. And neurologically, it is set in your nervous system as the first response to say, oh, I messed up again and I'm no good because I do that all the time. To notice that you're doing that and then to interrupt it and choose to say something kind to yourself, to treat yourself as if you are a valuable human being.
I have chills from you talking about the self-care bit because women need that message. When you go through a divorce, that's almost the pinnacle of your negative self-talk, of how selfish you are, especially if you choose it. And then follow that up with the necessary self-care, or, those steps that you have to take to complete your transformation. They all just feel very selfish, and we have to get past that.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you did to deal with those negative messages that said you were selfish? As women, we're programmed to never be selfish.
Yes,
right?
yeah, exactly. Especially if you went to Catholic school. I will never forget that I called my church when I was debating. I was pretty much already had my mindset that I was going to go through a divorce. And this was like my last call that I was going to make. And the woman said to me, the sacrifices you're making in that marriage don't compare to Jesus hanging on the cross. So it's like, but talk about shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need people to know that divorce is not an easy decision. It's heavy. And then you carry the shame of your decision and any relationships you get into. And if the subsequent relationships are abusive or fail, then you really should have known better. So how did I get through that? I got a counselor.
Learning, however you do that, whether it's with a coach or a therapist or a friend, generally family members are not your first resource. But you might be lucky that you have a sister or a brother or sibling who you trust deeply and you can have those conversations with. There is no shame in divorce. And shame is not useful. It doesn't help you unless you've truly done something bad and you have to work through that. If you had murdered your husband, you would have something to feel some shame about. Divorce is not murdering someone else. Learning to trust yourself is an essential part of the process. And I think that begins well before divorce is even thought about. It's experiencing something in yourself that is either denied or set aside or ignored by you, by the relationship, by your partner, and realizing somewhere in yourself a small voice that says, but this matters. It matters whether I am true to this part of myself. It matters what I do in response to this very real need in me to be an artist, to receive affection, to whatever it is. In the process of trying to be true to that in yourself, finding that it's not possible in the relationship. And the real challenge, I think, is determining whether you can find a way to work through this within the context of the relationship. Because there will always be challenging periods in a long-term relationship. There's just no way around that, especially if one or both of you is growing as a human being, which from my point of view is an essential part of life. Yes, if you can move through that and grow and maintain your relationship, even through some struggles, fabulous. That is wonderful, because the relationship will be enriched by that. If you keep trying to make that work and you continually come up against barriers that seem unchangeable, and you've really made an effort with your partner, then something has to change.
Right. So the piece about trusting yourself, it's hard to trust yourself when you see a failure. You immediately think when anything fails that's not, maybe that's not a trustworthy source. So when the failure comes from you, then it's hard to trust yourself again, especially if you've had multiple failures. We have to start reframing failure, and we're not going to trust ourselves until we get past like that mistakes happen, and you can still trust someone when there are mistakes.
Absolutely. Trust doesn't just happen. Generally, you build trust. So you have to build trust with yourself. In order to stand up for what's right for you, you have to learn to trust what's right for you. Well, in order to trust that, you have to go back even further. You have to step back and know what's right for you. And that in itself is a big challenge, because in the relationship, most of us have been going, this is right for me. Oh, well, that's right for you. Oh, okay. Well, I'll back up to here and that'll accommodate you. But then, well, have I accommodated myself? Have I taken care of myself? So again, you're coming back to self-care. You're coming back to how do you love yourself? Embrace every part of yourself. All human beings have a part that just wants to be taken care of. That little child that never quite got enough of that, right? But for women, particularly, most of us have been taught that we need to be taken care of to one degree or another. I need to take care of that part of myself, reassure that part of myself, and embrace her. And then she calms down and she doesn't worry as much, and she doesn't get in my way as much. Her fear doesn't control so much of my life. And I'm able to move forward in my business, in all my relationships with other people. So all of these things need to be brought to the light and embraced.
Clarifying who I was and what I wanted was pivotal for me. And yes. In my conversation with Katie, I was saying there's so much joking on movies and TV about the woman who's older than whatever society thinks she should be, and she's being too picky, and she's just got this laundry list of things she wants. And I call BS on that, because I started getting everything I wanted out of life when I created that list. How can you be happy when you don't know what makes you happy? And that doesn't just go for partners, that goes for everything.
Absolutely true. And I certainly didn't really know what I wanted when I got married. I knew I wanted some children. I knew I wanted babies. But beyond that, I didn't really know. What happens then is that if I don't know what I want, I can't get what I want. I can't be clear to the universe, even to myself. And if I'm not clear, then I'm more willing to accept things that really aren't okay. So learning what I want and how to nurture myself, I have to be able to nurture myself before I can seek that from someone else. I do agree with the saying, you have to love yourself first. That's not easy. It takes work to come to a place of accepting everything that I am. Now, that doesn't mean that it's okay for me to behave just anyway, but if I take care of that part of myself, I don't experience that as much.
I just want to inspire other women that although divorce sucks and it is a tragedy and you're going to experience some crap, that you can become a better version of yourself. And just like if you are in the wrong job, sometimes it's really important to do the wrong things in order to know it was wrong. If you take one thing away from what Stefany's saying, don't beat yourself up, that this is part of the process.
Absolutely not. When you find yourself beating yourself up, interrupt yourself, stop, breathe, and just be kind to yourself. Here you are struggling through challenges, and you have a relationship with yourself that you have established over many years, and reconnect with this much profounder, larger, true self where there is no fear. Issues of confidence and doubt and all of those things disappear there. You can develop your relationship with that true self. As you're changing your relationship with the psychological or created self, that is not who you really are. It's something you've created. And you can change that. I guarantee you, because I have.
And I have.
And Jill has. Right, exactly. My life is filled with joy and delight and a centeredness that I didn't know was possible.
If anybody wants to work with you, what would be the best way to get a hold of you?
They can email me. They can go to my website, which is sensationalwisdom.com. I'm delighted to do a complimentary discovery session with anyone who is interested in learning more about me, learning more about coaching, checking out whether we're a good match, which is very important for a successful coaching relationship. I just want to say a coaching relationship is a partnership that's devoted to the success of the client, whatever that means for the client. I don't define that for the client. The client says, this is what I want. I want to get through this to this new place, and I need some support. And then I am totally there to help them move through that in the most successful way possible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chell.
This was a great chat.
You are a gem.
Thank you.
We hurt more than just ourselves when we insist on staying static. You have more to offer this world, and you owe it to yourself to dig deeper.